Right, let's move on to today's main subject then. We are going to the Championship and we're heading right down towards the bottom. We've covered Darren Moore at Sheffield Wednesday. We've covered Gareth Ainsworth at Wycombe, and we've covered Paul Warne at Rotherham. The side just above those three is Derby County, and they're managed by Wayne Rooney. When Wayne Rooney took over full time, they were on a nice little run. They kept lots of clean sheets. They looked like they were going to escape, but things have gone very sour, haven't they, Mike?
Yeah, they're in trouble. And I think we've kind of potentially reached a point now where, there's worrying signs. 5 straight defeats on the spin at this time of the season is really not what you want. But it's kind of exaggerated a little bit for me by the fact that, a week ago, I can't think how the timelines now with this season, but I think it was a week ago. Certainly 2 matches have been played since. Wayne Rooney was 100%. We're not going down. We're not getting into trouble. Utter conviction in the way that he conducted himself in the interview. That Derby will stay in the Championship, no problem whatsoever. Since then, 2 limp performances. And, it just makes you wonder. He's kind of come as a player with an elite mentality from his Manchester United days, winning all them titles and trophies. And, for him, it's that utter conviction is part and parcel of winning. That's what you need to have to win. And I'm guessing he's just trying to, infuse that into his players, relay that utter confidence to his players and assume it will rub off. And earlier in the season, when the stakes weren't so high, it was rubbing off. But now we're reaching the crucial stage, and I'm not sure that those players have got as much conviction as he has, and they're really starting to doubt themselves. So now you're kind of in a position where a manager's kind of put his neck on the line and said, we are not going down, we're going to be absolutely fine. You see 2 performances like that, and then the manager starts to lose a little bit of credibility because he's got to find other answers now, not just his mentality, not just his attitude towards the position.
Interesting, because when he started, there was a lot of media hype, obviously, and a lot of quotes circulating. And one of them was, the one thing I demand from my players is respect, he said. He also then went on to say, if a player doesn't do that, doesn't show the respect, and doesn't put the effort in on the training ground that we feel necessary, then they won't play. We're not asking a lot, just a few hours a day. Players are getting paid a lot of money to do that, and the fans deserve that. The club deserves that. So obviously, talking pretty impressively at that stage, and they did pick up a number of clean sheets. Derby were always going to lack firepower. You look at that squad. But what they didn't do under his tenure at the start was lack effort. Several clean sheets in a row, really hard to score against as well for a long time. But look at the goals that they conceded against Birmingham yesterday. And this was highlighted on EFL and Quest last night as well. The way they just almost gave up marking Lukas Jukovic, and also against Preston as well, some horrible goals conceded there. It does feel to me like whatever he had, that respect of the players all on side and all fighting for the same cause, that really has dissipated, hasn't it? And something's happened in that period that the players have just taken their eye off the ball. Do you think that's entirely down to the situation they find themselves in, or is there something else at play?
Yeah, I think it's purely mental. I think it's pressure, and I think it's confidence, and I think they've got absolutely neither. I don't think it's necessarily a strength that Rooney has to inject that either, because I think it just came naturally to him. I think he was a gifted player all his teenage years and all his upbringing through the youth system at Everton, and it all came to him very quickly, very young, which suggests he wasn't ever short of confidence from a very, very early age. So it's hard for someone who's kind of who that level of confidence comes naturally to inject it into others, because you don't know what it is that makes you so confident in your own ability. And, so this is kind of where it's at. When he first came into Derby as a player, it was evident, even Philip Cocu mentioned, and, it was said that standards in training raised across the board because he came in and he set an example and everybody just wanted to impress him. And I think it's been the same as a manager. And I think, effort is not, I wouldn't question their effort right now. I just think they've been doing it for so long. They've been trying to impress for so long. They've been pushing so hard for so long. But I think underlying it all is, potentially last season under Philip Cocu, there was a lack of discipline, which is not necessarily, they had a real terrible record with red cards and yellow cards and stuff like that on the pitch. Petty indiscipline. I think Philip Cocu was a very liberal manager and let the players make their own mistakes and learn from their own mistakes rather than coming down hard on them. And I just think, daily habits, there's possibly the standards haven't been brilliant, over the past 18 months or so. I think this has potentially been coming for a long time. I think this has been in the post for Derby, a serious relegation battle because of all the FFP concerns, how they've downgraded the squad year on year. And, they've not made many big transfers for a long time now. And I just think Rooney's kind of picking up the tab now of all of that downsizing and the fact that the efforts that were, how deep everybody was digging when he first came to the club as a player. And then when he came in and stepped in as a manager, then they all stepped up for him and really dug deep for those clean sheets. But ultimately, I don't think there's an awful lot of quality going forward. They've had some injuries at the top end of the pitch and they're struggling for goals and they're struggling for creativity. The digging deep and the working hard only gets you so far. And I think deep down, those players know that we're only as good as the teams that we're down there with. We're no better than that. And I think that's the issue they've got. Pressure's starting to take its toll now and they're struggling for confidence.
Yeah, interested to pick up on what you were saying about Derby downgrading their squad, because if you read up on Derby's problems this season, obviously there's a myriad of reasons, some of which you've outlined there, Mike, but a lot of it is being pointed towards the injury to Christian Bielik, who was a linchpin in the centre of the field. But also you mentioned the problems going forward as well. Well, Lee Gregory is signed in January. His injuries haven't helped as well. And other players who've sort of had stop-start campaigns. You go back 2, 3, 4, certainly further back than that, seasons. If you had 2 or 3 key players missing at Derby, there would always be others to come in. There would always be replacements waiting in the wings. But now you take those out the side, you've only got youth players who can come in and fill those gaps. So it really is, Rooney has inherited quite a dire situation compared to, say, what, going back a bit, Steve McLaren, adopted when he was in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, Derby were a club you're probably only going back 2 or 3 years, probably the end of the Gary Rowett time. And you're looking through that squad and it was a who's who of championship pedigree. There were so many players there that had so many years and so many senior appearances in the championship. Yeah, and that's kind of what's missing now. And, like you say, that lack of leaders probably would have pulled rank, when you're talking about the indiscipline of certain players. We go back to the drink driving issue that happened last season. That was the big trigger. That was a big alarm bell that was ringing about, not all is what it probably should be behind the scenes there. There's a lack of senior players to pull rank, and they've all stepped up in dispatches for Rooney, but Rooney's kind of been a lone leader when he was on the pitch, and now he's off the pitch. Senior pros seems to be what they're lacking, and depth that they used to have. And I just think this is what happens when you let a squad go stale. It's not only what are you left with, but it's almost like you don't see what's leaving the building. When it's day by day and it's over a slow process, it can always seem quite sudden when you suddenly find yourselves in a relegation battle. But that's what, when I say this feels like it's been in the post a little bit for Derby. You don't upgrade your squad and you just kind of let things fritter away because they couldn't afford to upgrade the squad. Let's have it right. And this is the position they find themselves in now. But where Wayne Rooney's concerned, the issue he's got is he's got to find a way to transmit what he knows and, how he's conducted himself throughout his career as a player. He needs to transmit that to his players in a new way now. Just being Wayne Rooney now is not enough. When he first came in, that conviction kind of rubbed off. Now he's got to learn to find a way, because he's not a logical person, he's an emotional person. It all comes from within. It's like an inner drive that drove him on as a player. And he tries to articulate that, or he tries to deliver it, express it in a way that the players feel how he felt as a player and want to go onto the pitch feeling like Wayne Rooney. But that was the honeymoon period. Now it needs to be something else, and we're not seeing the something else as it stands. And I made the comparison here, and I made the comparison at the time when we brushed on Wayne Rooney, when he was saying he's doing a good job earlier in the season. I make a lot of comparisons with Lee Bowyer, but Lee Bowyer's a very logical manager. Rooney's more emotional. It's about that inner drive.
Experienced players are lacking, as you've pointed out there. But is experience what Wayne Rooney is lacking in the dugout? Does he need some, wily old coaches alongside him. He's got Liam Rossini, but again, he's, generally speaking, he's in the infancy of his coaching career. And I'm going to use an example here, Mike, and you probably say this is full of self-interest, but forgive me. Neil Critchley at Blackpool came in all guns blazing, had a great pre-season, struggled to get results. Things weren't quite going right in the opening few weeks of the season. Brought in Colin Calderwood to go alongside him, who obviously has had an indifferent spell as a main manager, but is undoubtedly a quality coach. And he improved the defence, and slowly results started to turn. Not suggesting that, just one coach will do it, but is the trouble that Wayne Rooney is not necessarily surrounded by years of experience on the training ground?
Yeah, it might well be. I'm not sure exactly what Steve McLaren's doing there and what the relationship would be between McLaren and Rooney, because I don't see McLaren as the type of imposing figure that would, and I'm not entirely sure whether he's on the training ground or whether he's just kind of in the background and, as an advisory role, but not necessarily, getting stuck in and on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I think it's a very valid point that you make. And experience is a big, big thing for Rooney. I think it's when they make the comparisons with Lee Bowyer, for example, and it's ironic because it was Lee Bowyer that beat him yesterday. And, we talk about experience. He's the way he perceives the world. Experience is really important. And with Lee Bowyer, we talked about over 500 appearances, elite level, Champions League, all of that things. There's not much he doesn't understand from a tactical perspective. But Bowyer's a very logical person. He dissects all these tactical nuances, immediately observes on a pitch, this is what this game needs. Whereas with Rooney, it comes from an emotional place where he observes and there's not much he hasn't seen on a football pitch and doesn't understand. But in terms of being able to convey it in a logical way to his players, it's not. He needs a solution like Lee Bowyer's landed on a solution that, well, if you hit the ball up to the back stick and you've got a big centre forward like Lukas Jukovic, that's how easy football can be. That's how easy it can be to win a game like this. Just land on that simple solution, a logical solution. Rooney doesn't look for, it doesn't come naturally to him to find those logical solutions. It comes from within. It comes from within the drive of the players. I think he needs somebody alongside him who can, Rooney's not short of football knowledge. He probably knows the answer for most situations, but he doesn't necessarily know how to convey it in a logical way. It's just something he felt. It was instincts he worked on. And, he possibly needs someone to bounce off to just be able to say, right, well, let's talk this through. I can use my experience for similar situations. And so what should I be saying to the players? Because just asking them to dig deeper and asking them to, cut out the individual errors. And, I'm listening to his interviews and they're a little bit limited right now, and I don't think that this isn't a criticism of Rooney, because I didn't think it was a bad thing earlier in the season when they're getting results. I'm hearing him say things that are more insightful than you would associate with Wayne Rooney previously from his player days, his interviews. So, I think it's just the answers at the moment. And we're talking about someone coming in alongside him and working as that right-hand man. Well, it's too late for that now. They've got to find something in these last two matches. And, it's shaping up, final day of the season, Sheffield Wednesday at home. If Sheffield Wednesday were to get within striking distance, they've got to find a solution that's more than just, that inner determination.
There's no doubt that Rooney will make an excellent coach during, this is obviously a bit of a blip for him, but he's spoken about before that from the age of 18, he was studying coaches and looking at how they worked. And he's also mentioned that he's taken bits of what he learned from Louis van Gaal, from Sir Alex Ferguson as well. And no doubt, there's a bit of David Moyes in there. And he's spoken about all of taking the best bits of those particular managers and implementing them into the way he coaches. Jose Mourinho, in fact, as well, you mentioned as well. He said that he wanted to incorporate the strengths of those managers, but he also wanted to learn from their weaknesses, and talked about how Ferguson, obviously helping players on an individual basis, the way he went about his business was inspirational. So he's got the grounding, he's got the willingness, and clearly if he was studying coaches from the age of 18, he probably feels this is what he was destined to do. So get past this point, Mike. Say that Derby stay up by the skin of their teeth. there is a decent coach in there, and Wayne Rooney, certainly, I don't think if this all goes wrong, I don't think it's the last we're going to see of him in the technical area, is it?
No, I think he's got the ingredients. And I think there was a time maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago when a player of his experience would, get a managerial role and would just flop. And that people would say, oh, well, he's just because of his name. Great players don't make great managers. I think in this day and age, I think it's different. I think that experience is important. I don't think any manager, I don't think it's not like a Paul Merson in the 90s coming out of football thinking, I don't know what to do next. I'm not going to run a pub, so I might as well be a football manager. No, you don't get jobs like this now unless you've done some level, you've done your badges or, you've done some level of groundwork to get the job. So I think that the experience that players like Wayne Rooney have got and bring to the game, and you can even go back to Frank Lampard as well at Derby, the experience they bring is very important. And I think it's very highly respected by players who, we talk about the millennial footballer now and more into their own personal development and developing their own careers. The opportunity to work with a Wayne Rooney or a Frank Lampard is a big thing for younger players nowadays. So, yeah, I do think that, there's definitely a future for Wayne Rooney, and he's shown promise in the early stages. And this can be a big learning curve for him at the end of this season. But yeah, like I say, you talk about his experience in his previous managers, though. What I would also say is, we talked about Jose Mourinho at the beginning and the fact that his divisive nature when it comes to elite mindset and non-elite mindset. And, in terms of dressing room, Wayne Rooney's experience has pretty much all been at the very, very top level. So he's probably seeing things in certain players now that are really, it's unfamiliar. I don't really know how your mind works because it's not like my mind or any of the players I played with. So how do I first of all, you've got to begin to put yourself in the shoes of these players. And I think that's possibly that's going to be a big part of the learning curve for Wayne Rooney. He's trying to understand that not everybody you surround yourself with in football has an elite mindset. There's a reason why these players haven't played in the Premier League. You've got to get to understand why that is and build bridges between where you were and where they are now and understand what's in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll obviously see what happens this season and then see if he's given the time to plan for next season. If indeed he is allowed to stay at Derby, if he's given the dreaded vote of confidence, I guess, over the summer months. We talk about needing some experience alongside him. We still don't know what is going on with the takeover at Derby. Well, I certainly don't anyway. I'm not sure they do either. And there will obviously be a little bit of money for transfers should the purchase not have been completed by the summer. What do you expect him to do over the summer months, Mike? Do you expect him to kind of completely rip things up and start again, or do you think it's a matter of just tweaking here and there and filling those key positions?
I think he can probably take a leaf out of Frank Lampard's book, pull a few strings to get a few decent loan signings. I mean, you think back to, Mason Mount, Harry Wilson, and some of the players that Lampard was able to bring in. If Rooney can pull a few of those strings and get some players of Premier League mentality, even if they're only barely out of development squads and stuff like that, I think that's possibly going to be the way forward for him. So he can begin to bridge that gap between, Championship standard player and Premier League standard player. Because if the money's not there, I think recruitment is going to be essential. Derby, I don't think any club can afford to have the past 4 or 5 transfer windows that Derby have had and expect to be competitive. Eventually, you're going to run out of, your ability to be competitive at this level. And we've seen it now. It's kind of, the chickens are coming on to roost a little bit over the past 3-4 years, not just what's happened this season. So again, under Frank Lampard, the transfers they did do were loan deals. They were 1 year only, and that might be the road as it stands right now that they have to go down again. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's I think it's going to come through recruitment, absolutely, because I just think there's a lack of strength in depth. I think there's a lack of, they're just missing certain qualities. And you think back to the Frank Lampard season, it was all about them players that they brought in from Premier League level. And that can potentially be the difference between a playoff campaign and a relegation campaign.